Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Very
You
good.
are, sir.
Alhamdulillah. So, we have been discussing since the last few weeks about lesson planning, how to make the lesson effective, how to make it creative, how to make it engaging, how to Islamize it as well. And we have been discussing about that since the last few weeks, and we'll continue with that process today as well, inshallah. When we were talking about the chapter of plants, we can introduce under the title of Islamization, we can introduce a few quotations from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For an instance, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he called an area in an area called Zuraybut Ta'wil. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam announced that whoever cuts here a tree here should plant a new tree instead. As a result, the area soon turned into a small forest. So plantation and conservation of trees is something that is a part of the Islamic doctrine. Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said, whoever plants a tree and it matures, Allah plants a tree in paradise for that person. Right? So you're connecting, when you're quoting these ahadith, you're connecting the idea of conservation, an idea of tree plantation with that of modern science. So effectively speaking, you're Islamizing the chapter, you're Islamizing the concept of plants and planting and taking care of plants by quoting relevant quotations from the Quran and from the Hadith. Allah says in the Quran that He created human beings as His Khalifa, that is representative on earth. Like a teacher appoints a monitor, you can talk to them, the students, in the language in which they can understand. In her absence, what does he or she do? Tells the students to misbehave or to behave well, obviously to behave well. Similarly, as representatives of Allah on earth, we must take care of the things on the earth, including plants. Obviously, Allah is not absent, Allah is present always, but He has given us the free will, whether we take care of the things on the earth as His Khalifa, whether we take care on and we care for the plants, for an instance, or we don't. This is something that we will be held accountable for as well. Now, on day 2, we continue with the lesson summary, because at the end of the day, or the end of the session and the end of the period, we have to summarize. So we can summarize by asking them what are the uses of the plants and trees that we discussed on day 2. And then we can ask them that Allah says in the Quran that Shaitan will mislead us, tell us to commit sins. So should we listen to him? What are the bad things the Shaitan tells us to do about plants, regarding plants? Then we discussed that don't pluck trees, don't cut down trees. These are things that we have been discussing in that period. So the students will recount them, that it is Shaitan who tells us to cut trees. It's Shaitan who tells us to pluck leaves unnecessarily. Then we move on to what are the ways of taking care of plants and trees. That also we have discussed on day 2, this session, the period on day 2. Then that will be discussed. The harms and the caring aspects can be explained using a vertical fishbone diagram of matching opposites, wherein a bad thing for the plant is mentioned on the left side and the corresponding good thing on the right hand side. You can divide the diagram in this way. You can draw a line and you can draw a fishbone diagram. On the left hand side, you can write all the things that harm the plants. On the right hand side, in that fishbone diagram, you can write all the things that are useful for the plants, or the ways to take care of the plants. So left and the right, and a central vertebral column in between of the fish, right? So that is what is called as a fishbone diagram. You can turn it around horizontally as well. On the top, you can write the good things. On the bottom, you can write the bad things. Or you can construct it vertically with the left and right. Now, why to use a fishbone diagram to summarize the chapter or summarize that particular unit that we have covered in that particular day? When we use these graphic organizers, it becomes easier to retain information because you have something visual to see and connect to it. This is very important. Having a visual cue to the content is critically important. It plays an important role in the retention of the information. This is very important. And you can continue with the summarization of the chapter. Or you can use another option maybe. Instead of a fishbone diagram, the harms and caring aspect can be taught by using diagonal lines on a graph, right? The good points are mentioned on the upward diagonal, which culminates in a healthy looking tree diagram, and the bad points are mentioned on the downward diagonal, which culminates in a sorry looking tree diagram. So you can draw a x-axis and y-axis, and then from point 0, you make a diagonal, right? Point 0, you take a line up and you write down all the good points, and then a tree at the end, a good healthy tree you can draw. And on the negative side, on the fourth quadrant, the negative side, you can draw a tree diagram with bad points, right? That would lead to something bad, meaning a poor shape, a tree in a very poor shape, a tree that is, has with broken branches and not a good looking tree. So what are the things that you have done or not done which has harmed a tree for it to reach the stage that it has reached? You draw a poor tree at the end. So what you're doing here is you're giving again a physical look with that graphic organizer, right? It helps in retain the information, and you can ask the students themselves to come and populate what is written, to populate that diagram, right? Maybe a set of students will come. Maybe you can divide the class into two. One group will complete all the caring part of the diagram, and the other group will complete all the harmful parts for the trees part of the diagram, right? And you can set a competition between the two. Who writes the first 10 points first? Who reaches the first 10 points first? So now, and then the students in each group will prompt the one who is the representative who is drawing or writing, will prompt him to or her to write down the content quickly. So what will happen? The class will get involved. There will be something physical like a diagram to remember the content easily, right? This is one way of doing it. Another way is making a matrix. A possibility is another possibility. Wherein on the left side of the matrix, all the negative aspects, there's the harms to the plants. And on the right hand side, all the positive things, the ways to take care of the plants, right? The solutions. On the left hand side, the problems that happen with the trees, and right hand side, the positive things that you can do for the trees, right? Again, you can divide the class into two teams. You can engage the students. You can get them involved. You can make them write instead of you writing, right? So that kind of engagement and involvement of the students to populate these graphic organizers on the whiteboard or the blackboard, whatever you have, summarizes the content easily. It's a way of recapitulation. There are several ways of summarizing and recapitulation. There is another method called as the persuasion map. It's yet another method of identifying or revising the opposite concepts. That's problem and solution concepts. Persuasion map, where you have two boxes, where you have one box, right? And then there is another box on the corner, on the corner of that box, you draw another small box. Lower box indicates the problem and the higher box indicates the solutions. What are the problems and what are the solutions? Say the tree is drying, right? The leaves are getting shredded off, right? The leaves are falling off. The solution will be water the trees, right? Another persuasion map you can draw, where the problem statement in that big box would be that the tree is infected with pests. In the solution box, you would write the tree should be subjected to spraying of pesticides, or pesticides should be sprayed on the trees. So what are you doing? Problem, solution, persuasion maps. The entire board can be filled up with these double rectangles of persuasion maps. What happens? And ask the students. You pose the question to the student and ask the student to reply. Ask the students to reply, right? And then the representatives of the students will themselves come and fill in the solutions. You state the problem, and they will come up and fill in the solutions. Again, you can develop a competition around it. You can divide it into two teams, right? I can maybe a 5 to 6 set of problem statements here, 5 to 6 set of problem statements here, and solution boxes also are designed. Which team will fill in the solution statements first? You can develop a competition within the class, engaging the class, and at the same time revising it. Right? These are, as I've been saying since last few minutes, graphic organizers which are critically important in refreshing the content, in summarizing the content, for the sake of recapitulation. Right? This is important. And those rectangles in a persuasion map could be replaced with circles, right? It could be replaced with a polygon. Right? There is no limit to your imagination. You imagine in one chapter, if you used a rectangle, another chapter you use a circle, another chapter you use a polygon, right? Keep on changing, keep on playing around with these graphic organizers. Another method that could be used for summarizing the concept is all three aspects can be written in a concept circle or a description wheel. All three aspects means the uses of the plants, the way to care for the plants, and the ways of harming the plants. So you make a big pie chart, right? And make 3 blocks within that wheel, within that circle, within that pie chart, each representing the 3 aspects that we have covered in the lesson. One is the uses. The second one is the ways to care for the plant. The third one is the harms to the plants. Now, again, divide the class into three parts and tell each part to complete one block, maybe uses, maybe harms, or maybe caring, right? So what happens by doing this is, again, using graphic organizers keeps and engaging the students, keep the students focused in that process of summarizing the content. And the content also gets summarized and it becomes easier to retain, right? And the teacher should allow the students to say the points, and the teacher should act as a facilitator, right? She should not be the one who would be actually doing the writing, right? She should facilitate the process. The students themselves will fill in the content on the board, right? This is a method of doing it. Then at the end of that, the process of summarizing, one of the tools, I just gave you a few tools. There are many such tools. There are many graphic organizers available on the internet. You can pick and choose any. right? And at the end of the day, at the end of that session, you've got to give some homework, schoolwork. And as I said earlier, that schoolwork or homework need not necessarily be written work in the notebook. Obviously, you will give them somewhere down the line written work to write down in notes as well. But it need not, homework need not necessarily mean textual content written down in the notebook, right? It could be that, and it could be something else. It could be some activity as well, right? Say, for an example, you can plant as an activity, as a schoolwork. We can take all the students out to plant a tree, right? Water that sapling, right, in the school, or as a homework, plant a tree, plant a small sapling in your colony where you stay, near your building, whatever, right? Then fertilize that plant, water the plant and fertilize the plant, keep the plant in the sunlight, right? This is something that we can do. We can give them an activity such as this. We can tell them to make 2 pots of plants. 1 pot, keep it in the sunlight. 1 pot, keep it away from the sunlight. 1 pot, water it. 1 pot, do not water it. 1 pot, put manure in it. Another pot, don't put manure in it. And after a few days or a few weeks, and then check what is happening with those 2 plants. 1 pot was cared for, the other pot wasn't cared for. So what happens? Now, this is practical learning, right? This is practical learning. So homework could be something that could go beyond the notebook, right? Then ask the students as homework for project work, ask them to bring pictures or materials like a sample grass, small amount of grass, maybe a little bamboo stick, maybe a little part of rubber, right? The things that we get from a tree, and let them do this as a group work, right? Make groups in the class, make each group bring some item, maybe grass, maybe leaves, maybe branches of trees, maybe a bamboo stick, maybe rubber or whatever. The things that you get from the trees, pictures of those materials, or maybe those materials themselves, if they are small enough to be stuck on a chart paper, those materials themselves, or at least the pictures. And then make another group and ask them to bring pictures on the various forms of harming the trees. Make another third group and ask them to bring pictures of various forms of taking care of the trees, right? So what you're doing is giving them work. Now you're collecting all of these pictures. You want them to bring them because you have a plan to utilize these pictures somewhere down the line, maybe on the 3rd day, maybe on the 4th day, right? So to make it creative, to make it interesting enough, right? Now on day 3, day 2 is over. Now day 3, lesson recap, right? You can again use the different graphic organizers that I talked about. And then recap, what did we learn about the plants in this lesson, the benefits of the plants and the ways to care for the plants and the harmful impact on the plants, right? So on day 3, maybe we can do some activities based on the lesson. And on day 3, check the homework that was given on day 2, right? And the homework was, give them a reminder of the things, the pictures that had to be brought by different groups. That was the homework that was given. Remind them to bring those pictures, right? Now, on day 3, you can do enactments. Enactments which will enhance the process of deeper learning, deeper understanding of the concepts, role playing, enactments, right? What can you do? Say, for an example, a child is plucking flower, right? Hurting his or her friends, like make one boy or one girl, whoever, a big sized boy, make him a tree. Tell the other children, a few of them, not the entire class, to pluck on the clothes of that boy was become a tree. He'll spread his hands out like a tree, like maybe a big banyan tree, right? Plucking the leaves, plucking the flowers, plucking and what do we call, cutting the trees. Do something that will harm the tree. The other children will try to harm the tree. Then make one child as a shaitan, right? And let him come and do waswasa, instigate the other children around that tree to unnecessarily cut the trees, right? And then cut down the branches. Then there would be make some of the students into birds. Some of them will be like birds, will behave or act like birds because they're becoming homeless. They're screaming, right? Then some of the students will become animals, right? When there was the tree, make the child sit under the branch of the tree and make the child feel cool. When the branch of the tree is cut under the waswas of shaitan, some child is becoming a shaitan. You cut the branch of the tree and now there is no more shade and the animal is feeling hot, right? One of the children will become an animal. One of the child will become a screaming bird. One of the students will become a shaitan who will be instigating some other children to cut down the trees, cut down the branches, pluck on the leaves, right? So what are you doing now? You're creating a scenario. You're creating a scenario, right? This is an enactment of the things that you taught them. You taught them about don't harm the trees and the different ways of harming the trees, right? And the impact that harming of trees has, the impact that the cutting of the branches and cutting of the trees have, right? On the animals, on the birds, so on and so forth, right? Then the tree, this banyan tree now speaks out, it needs, I am thirsty, I am thirsty. Now the other part, the positive part, right? Another set of children will come in, right? When this set of children, those who are harming the tree depart, and the animals and the birds who are afflicted by that harm depart, another set of children come in. This is a role play that you're doing within the classroom, another set of children come in. Now this, banyan tree is now screaming, I'm thirsty, I need water. One child will pour water, not the actual water, maybe some kind of spray utensil to spray the water, right? Maybe a mug or something, right? Spraying the water, right? Then the tree, the banyan tree, the big boy who's become a banyan tree, he will scream out that I am hungry, I am hungry. Another boy will come in and give some manure, right? That manure may not be actual manure, it will be symbolic, right? And then the tree will feel that the manure is being utilized. He'll act as if the manure is being utilized and his hunger is getting satiated, satisfied. Then make some small kids in the classroom make them do a role play of insects or pests will coming and trying to eat out the fruits of on the trees, or trying to afflict the bark of the tree, right? And then the tree will scream that I'm being hurt by these insects, I'm being hurt by these pests. What happens? The farmer, another child, he comes in and sprays insecticides, right? Then maybe one of the kids will become a monkey, hopping, right? Hopping on the bench and coming and trying to pluck the fruits, right? Then another kid will become a farmer. He'll come and then he will behave as if he's a scarecrow, right? Trying to shoo away the monkeys, right? And putting fences around the tree, around the orchard, right? So that other animals, initially some pigs, some kid will become a pig, or cattle will come in and try to eat the different parts of the tree. Now, when the fence is done, now the same kids who have become cattle or pigs or whatever will come in, and then now they can't enter. All of this you can do all of this. creativity has no limit. Creativity has no end point, right? You can think and do as much as you can. Now, the whole chapter, what you're doing through these enactments is the entire thing that you taught the students in the classroom with regards to the uses of plants and harms of plants and taking care of plants. You're actually doing an enactment. And imagine the atmosphere that will be created in your classroom. It's all study that is happening. It's all learning that is happening. But imagine the atmosphere. Just imagine the atmosphere. The kids would be engaged, they would be laughing, they would be enjoying, they would be having fun, and they would be themselves prompting, right? The teacher will become the facilitator, and the kids, because there are many, many different aspects of the chapter, you're bringing in many kids, you're getting many kids involved. And even if all are not getting involved, all of them will definitely, even if they are not getting a role to play, all the kids, definitely they are getting involved in the process by prompting, right? So what you're doing is you're engaging the students and revising the chapter. You're revising the content in a unique way, right? Normally, what do we do? Revision of the chapter means you just pick up the chapter, open the chapter, and just read out content like a newsreader, right? And this is another way, right? As we discussed today about graphic organizers, visual cues for attention. We discussed today lesson enactments, right? And there are many such ways you can do enactments. There are many such graphic organizers you can use to spruce up, to spice up the process of teaching. Inshallah, I'm running out of time. We'll continue with this interactive way of teaching, this learning, this process of an engaging and creative lesson plan. Inshallah, next Saturday onwards. Jazakumullahu khair. Wa akhiru dawana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Jazakallah, Brother Ghufraan Ahmad, for your wonderful talk today. And definitely that would have, initiated teachers to be more, like you said, there's no limit for imagination. There's no limit for creativity. If people, try for that, they'll come up with fantastic ideas themselves, and they'll be surprised in themselves that they could have thought about it. So really, it was a instigating, uksane wali takreer thi. So thank you very much, and may Allah give best jazak to you. And before I conclude today's session, please bear with me for a couple of minutes. I would like to speak to you about the attendance of this session. Brothers and sisters, that we have been conducting this for a long time now, alhamdulillah. We all must have got used to it that Saturday morning after Fajr prayers, we have a sitting